Hi everyone, my name is Clare Povey and I am really excited to be one of the writing judges for the Portico Sadie Massey Awards this year. My first book, here, The Unexpected Tale of Bastien Bonlivre, published in 2021. But it wasn't the first book that I'd ever written. I've been telling stories, whether performing them to my parents or scribbling them down when I was old enough to write, for a long, long time. Stories in all their forms, especially books, have been part of my personality for my whole life. And if this sounds like you too, then great. I need to tell you something very important, that you must enter the Sadie Massey competitions. So if you have a good eye for what makes a good story, first up, enter the book review competition. Or two, if you like writing your own stories yourself, then enter the short story competition. As one of the writing judges, I thought it was only fair to share some of my writing with you too. So, set in 1920s Paris, my book is a middle grade mystery adventure, and my main character here, this guy, Bastien Bonlivre, is a gifted writer. He's inherited his skill of storytelling from his parents, who have sadly passed away in a mysterious hotel fire. So, I'm just going to read to you the opening chapter from The Unexpected Tale of Bastien Bonlivre. Here we go. Winter arrived in Paris on a November evening, later than expected, and Bastien realised he was in trouble. He looked around the dormitory as the metal beds of the other boys creaked from the weight of the bitter wind. Snores floated through the air, for they were all fast asleep apart from him. An urge to write had kept him up long past bedtime, despite the cold and frosty Parisian winter that could eat into brains like rot. Bastien shivered. He had to get out of here. Here was the orphanage for gentils garçons in the Petit Montrouge neighbourhood, where Bastien had lived for the last 3 months. Since the day the police had told him of his parents' fate, happiness had drained out of Bastien like a slow gas leak. With no other existing family to turn to, the authorities had marched him across the river and through the doors of his new home. He did not go willingly. When Bastien was old enough to understand words, his father had named their family the Three Musketeers, for they were united in strength, spirit, and look. Bastien had the same fair hair and topaz-coloured eyes as his parents. The freckles that run across his face and down his arms were an exact reflection of his mother's. And he'd always asked the barber to cut his hair short, just like his father's too. The three of them had never needed anyone else, for they had each other. Now, under the charge of Monsieur Xavier, the new orphanage director who cared for the boys as much as a pickpocket cared for an honest living, Bastien prayed nightly for a long-lost great-aunt to burst through the doors and save him from the misery of scrubbing toilet bowls. But tonight was not that night. Bastien looked over at the low, flickering flames of the furnace in the middle of the dormitory. It was the only light in the dark room. Metal beds were lined up in uniform rows either side of it, one each for the 8 boys who currently lived here, destined to spend the rest of their days together until they turned 18. The brick walls were bare, apart from a single barred window and an old painting of dark brown eyes that hung on the far wall. Felix, one of the other boys, had sworn he'd seen the eyes blink before. Bastien rubbed his hands together, warming his fingers, which felt as frozen as icicles. He slipped out from his blanket and placed his pocket-sized notebook beneath the loose floorboard underneath his bed. If he was caught writing in the dark, in a notebook he wasn't supposed to have, there'd be a heavy price to pay. Stories were strictly forbidden. Monsieur Xavier had arrived only days after Bastien and enforced his harsh rules without pausing for breath. The boys all missed the old director, the kind-hearted Monsieur Dupont, who'd gone for a walk along the River Seine early one morning and never returned. He treated them with compassion, whereas Monsieur Xavier had swept in like a bad smell and proceeded to empty all of the boys' trunks, telling them that their personal belongings would need to be sold off to provide enough money for their keep. Sensing Monsieur Xavier's cruelty, Bastien had hidden, under the loose floorboard, the few belongings he'd managed to rescue from home. A copy of his parents' book, The Voyage to the Edge of the Sky, as well as his burgundy leather pocket notebook and pen. He would never part with them. They were all he had from his previous life. The notebook had been a gift from his parents the night before they'd left for Cannes that summer. They'd bought many notebooks for him to write in before, but this one was different. Inside was blank, apart from the first line of a story they'd written. Once upon a time, there were 3 musketeers destined for a great adventure. This tale starts with us, but it ends with you, his mother had said, as she passed him the gift across the table. Go forward and write the unexpected, his father had said. He paused, taken Bastien's hand and clutched it tightly. Keep this notebook safe and never let it fall into the wrong hands. This is your story to tell. So I hope you enjoyed that extract, and if you're interested in finding out more about me and my books, you can visit my website, www.clarepovey.com. I hope you feel inspired to get your creative writing on and enter one of the brilliant Portico Sadie Massey Awards. You won't regret it.